I have a special spring in my step today because this opportunity is a special one to lead the House Democrats, bring everyone together as we go forward.
Congresswoman Nancy Pelosi reacting to her re-election as House Minority Leader after beating back a challenge from Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan. And we're back now with the panel. Well, House Democrats have had a bad run under Pelosi. Let's take a look. After the 2008 election, when Barack Obama won, they held 257 seats in the House. But after this election on November 8th, they now hold 194. That's a loss of 63 seats. Juan, how do you explain, given that record, House Democrats putting her back as their leader?
She's a tremendous fundraiser. There's just no question about it. And secondly, in this environment where you just had, potentially the first woman for the presidency defeated, on the Democratic side, I think women on the Hill have rallied to her support. And don't forget, so much of the base of the party in Congress comes from California, the West Coast, and the East Coast. So she's there for them. She'll do it. Tim Ryan, who was running against her, as you pointed out, from Ohio, said he could reach out, do better with blue-collar voters. But in fact, his legislative record is not that distinct. I think the best argument here is if you look at Pelosi, Jim Clyburn, Steny Hoyer. These are all politicians in their 70s who, as you say, have suffered defeat after defeat and the decimation of Democrats on Capitol Hill and also, by the way, in state governments around the country. Also, another point to be made is the people who vote Democratic these days, disproportionately millennials, young people, they voted overwhelmingly for Hillary Clinton. And yet they don't see it represented in this leadership, all in their 70s, and who don't seem to be in touch with a new, more vibrant message, more of that kind of energetic activist message. So
you're saying they did it for the old reasons, the old-fashioned inside political reasons, but in terms of appealing to the country in the future, not so smart.
Not so smart, and the question is, how do you then get this older group that's ensconced and has the money, because you're going to have to rebuild the party. There's an argument now about who's going to run the Democratic National Committee.
Get to that.
So the question is, how do you rebuild, and what is the message going forward? Just sitting on the sidelines as a journalist, I don't see that these folks are the ones that you would want to entrust with that new message.
So, Kim, let me bring you into this conversation. I mean, it was clear from this election that House Democrats do not have a message that resonates with millions of American voters, millennials, working class, rural. Why do you think they kept Pelosi?
I mean, part of this is Nancy Pelosi's failure, and for all of those reasons, has solidified her role there. At this point, 1/3 of all House Democrats hail from just 3 states in the country: New York, Massachusetts, and California. Everyone that was an opposing voice in that caucus has been driven out of the party, lost elections because of the very liberal governance of Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid and Barack Obama. So there are no voices left. Of course they reelected her because this is what's left of the party, believes that Nancy Pelosi is correct, even though she's 4 for 4 out there. It was amazing. When I listened to that Harvard Forum, the most extraordinary thing that came out of that was Democrats with their heads in the sand about why they lost this. They will not be honest with themselves. They believe it was Jim Comey, that the media was mean to them, that they didn't get their message out. That's not why they lost. They lost because people disagree with their policy.
Well, let's talk about another potential face of the Democratic Party that Juan alluded to, and that's the front runner to be the new chair of the Democratic National Committee, Congressman Keith Ellison, the first Muslim elected to Congress. Monica, the Anti-Defamation League says that a speech that Ellison made in 2010, in which he basically said U.S. foreign policy is run out of Israel, they call that speech, quote, disqualifying. So what does it say that he may be the front runner to be the face of the Democratic Party?
And that's one problematic example with Representative Ellison. In addition, in the past, he's called for a separate black state in America, and he also has very close ties to CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations, which some argue may be a front group for the Muslim Brotherhood. So, look, he is politically very far out there on the left, and the fact that the Democratic Party is now seriously considering him as its head tells you where the party is. This is no longer Bill Clinton's Democratic Party. This is Barack Obama's Democratic Party. Obama, over the last 8 years, has taken the party, moved it from center left all the way to the far left. And it turns out that the coalition that elected him and re-elected him was unique to him. And that without him on the ticket, they suffered massive losses. 2010, 2014, and now 2016. And a big part of this, which gets to what we were talking about earlier with the carrier deal and so on, is that Democrats have ignored, blown off, disrespected the working class. And it's not the first time they have done this. These people who came out for Donald Trump, a lot of them independents and Democrats, disaffected from their own party because they can't relate to them anymore, came out for Richard Nixon in 1968, 72, came out for Ronald Reagan, the old Reagan Democrats. And unless and until this Democratic Party leaves behind Barack Obama and his doctrinaire leftism, they're going to continue to suffer these kind of electoral defeats.
I want to end this segment by talking about our previous guest, Jill Stein. Lisa, what do you make of her recount effort? What's this all about?
Well, look, Hillary Clinton's campaign did a very extensive assessment of voting irregularities and all, the vote in all the states. They investigated every theory that people presented to them. They brought in outside academics, technologists, all kinds of people, and they found no evidence of any kind of systemic flaw in the system, whether it's hacking or failed machines or anything like that. So this is very, very, very unlikely to change the results of this election. So you have to wonder, why is Jill Stein pursuing this so hard? Now, of course, the integrity of our elections is very important, but I think this is good business for Jill Stein. Even though the money is in a separate account, she compiles a list of supporters that she can then take. That's what third parties need to build up their brand. On the flip side, Donald Trump is acting very aggressively to stop these recounts, and you kind of have to wonder why he's doing that as well, given that it's unlikely to change the outcome. In the words of a Disney princess, you sort of wonder why he doesn't just let it go, because it sort of feels like
wow, a Frozen reference there. That's a first.
If he's creating a certain amount of smoke around it as well, that I think could make some people wonder whether there's something real here. They may find some kind of irregularities, but it's unlikely to have an impact on who the president is going to be.
If I could interject here, I think that the real answer to your question would be ballot access, building a third party, a Green Party that's stronger. She said the money's segregated now in a separate account, but I think that what you're going to find is that once we go beyond this, she's going to say, you know what, the Green Party's stronger. It is the voice of people who were Bernie Sanders supporters on the left, and that we are building a structure that will allow us to be a successful, and that would be the first time, a successful third-party operation in 2020.
And he does, he can send lawyers to monitor it, but sending lawyers to monitor is one thing, suing to stop it completely is another.
No, I mean, I think it would be criminal malpractice for Donald Trump not to take this incredibly seriously, because it's the thing. Look, there's one reason Jill Stein's doing this. She was just on her show for 10 minutes. That's more time than she's ever had on any network. So,
actually, we had her during the campaign.
Yeah, that's fair.
We had her before.
But like this is Jill Stein's moment. She's building for the next presidential run.
And it would also be political malpractice, not for Donald Trump to try to resist some of this, because the whole point, people say that the recount is pointless. The whole point is to try to delegitimize the election. I mean, Donald Trump is the clear winner. It's trying to sow seeds of doubt and create a narrative that the left can dine out on for the next 4 years.
Oh, come on.
All right. Wow, I'm glad we got this much discussion about Jill Stein. And a reference, the only time that my granddaughter will have ever understood anything that was said. Thank you, panel. See you next Sunday.